Hey, welcome to Just Cook with Michael. Today we're going to make a bacalhau dish. Bacalhau is salted cod that's very popular in Europe, especially to the Portuguese and Italians. The Italians call it bacalhau, and this is probably, if I had to name one ingredient that personifies Portugal, it's this salted cod dish. It has a very deep tradition in Portuguese culture. Today's recipe is going to be Bacalhau Com Natas, which means bacalhau with cream, or salt cod with cream. The ingredients for today's dish are some milk, a little bit of flour, some cheese that's going to go on top as a gratinade, some potatoes, yellow onions, 1 egg, some butter, some nutmeg, some bay leaf, again, it's very traditional herb in Portugal, some heavy cream, the natas, black pepper, some salt. Very cautious with the salt as you use it because bacalhau, even though I soaked this for 24 hours, tends to be a little salty, so salt very cautiously early in the dish, maybe a quarter or tenth of what you think you need, and towards the end of the dish, if you believe it needs more salt, add more then. Some tomatoes for garnish. It's nice contrast to that white background. That's it, here we go. Purpose for salting the cod is the same thing as the purpose for salting prosciutto or cured meats. Was basically back when they didn't have refrigeration. So this is a way to preserve pathogens like bacteria. Because salt is so hypertonic, it pulls water out of the bacteria through osmosis and through, pulls water out of the fish. Because of that, bacteria can't survive in that environment. So you have a safe product that you could use throughout the year. Okay, the first step in any bacalhau dish is usually soaking the bacalhau 24 to 48 hours in water. And you drain the water at least 3 times a day. And then after, what that does is it pulls the salt out of the bacalhau. To develop your palate, to learn a lot about cooking, is to taste during the entire process. So just a tiny bit in there. And that's pretty good. I changed the water at least 4 times yesterday, and today probably twice, and I could taste it salty but not overpowering. Just to give you an idea, that way you have an idea of how much salt is coming out of the dish. So I have 2 medium-sized onions and 2 fairly large potatoes. Everybody has a little preference on how many onions or how much potato, the ratio to the actual bacalhau you want in there. Okay, next procedure is just to cut up the tomatoes. And again, this is for garnish. I'm going to saute them in some olive oil, but you could use, large tomatoes, cherry tomatoes. It's mainly for color. If you don't have these, roasted bell peppers are nice, or fresh peppers that you saute just to put over the top with some color. The next step is to shred the bacalhau. This is also the step, if the bacalhau did have skin, you would take off the skin. If you find any bones while you're doing this, you could pull those out. This bacalhau I got was fairly clean, no skin at all. And usually you just kind of like tear it apart with a fork. You definitely don't want to put this in the food processor because this, even though I'm shredding it, usually the bacalhau won't break down any further, and so you get nice bites of bacalhau throughout the dish. An interesting video I watched that was put out by Nat Geo. It's called The Lonely Doryman, and it was just a fascinating video. It's actually fairly long, about 45 minutes. The video was from the 1950s. They showed these Portuguese men that would, every year, they would go out for 6 months at a time. They would leave Lisbon, hop on this fairly big ship, maybe a 100-foot ship, and take off to Newfoundland, Labrador area, that northern part of Canada, and maybe near Iceland. And they would be out there for 6 months at a time. And the fascinating part is they have these dory boats that are 16 feet long. I mean, they're a tiny rowboat virtually. They set them off from the main ship every day. They let down whatever 30 of these dory boats with 1 man per boat that will go out for, 12-hour shift. And just to watch the video and how tossy-turny these boats are out in the ocean. And they come back to the main boat and they have to fling the fish from their little tiny dory boat. They're standing up, which I can't even see how you stand up on the thing. It's rocking so violently. And they're standing up, hurling this fish on the boat. As soon as they get all the fish on the boat and get into an assembly line and gut the fish, part it out, salt it. It's salted right on the boat. And they do this for 6 months until they go back home. It's pretty amazing. And they even have pictures of like wives and kids like tearing up as their fathers go off on this yearly adventure, almost like they're going off to war. And quite often people die. Good video, and I'll put that in the link. These are about the right size chunks. You could see maybe 1 inch to 1/2 inch you know, hopefully each bite of the casserole dish, you're going to have some bacalhau in there. Okay, now we're going to peel the potatoes. We'll slice up the potatoes now. Going for fairly thin slices, probably like 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch. Now we need 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. You either can use ground nutmeg or you could grate up some fresh nutmeg like I have here. It smells so good. It's delicious. You can tell that's plenty, so I used about 1/2 nutmeg. Okay, now I'll add in about a tablespoon of butter to the pan. So I am going to saute my onions until they are soft. You don't need to brown the onions. I'm going to turn down the heat. You just want to make them translucent. Maybe about 5 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and put in the bay leaf now. Crunch them up, maybe just a little bit. Damage some of the cells, let some of the flavors come out, but I'll try to keep it whole, that way it's easier to pull out at the end. That's from my bay leaf plant I just planted. Okay, now I'm going to add in the potatoes. 1/4 teaspoon of granulated salt. And now I'll add in 1 cup of whole milk. And that'll simmer for about 20 minutes. Okay, it's been about 10 minutes since I added in the milk. You want to stir it occasionally. In about 5 minutes, I'll add in the bacalhau and cook for an additional 15 minutes in this pan. Also, we put the milk in there and it's thickening up a little bit from the starch of the potatoes that gets released. But I'm going to make a roux out of 1 tablespoon of flour and 1 tablespoon of butter. And that's what I'm going to use to thicken this milk in here. The reason you can't just dump the flour in there directly because it'll clump up right away. The roux allows you to thicken it and not get clumps because each individual flour particle is covered with butter, and therefore when you put it in this dish, it just disperses evenly and thickens it evenly. Okay, our potatoes and onions have been cooking for about 15 minutes with the bay leaf. I am going to just taste a little bit of this milk sauce here. And again, just to get an idea, I want to know what it tastes like now, and then after it's cooked with the bacalhau for 15 minutes, I want to get an idea of how salty the dish is. Yeah, they're very mild. I definitely could taste the flavors coming through. So now I'll add in our bacalhau. The milk has definitely thickened up a little bit from the starch. And now I'm going to add in the nutmeg. Add in some fresh ground black pepper. And with the peppers, obviously you could improvise, use some black pepper, some white pepper, some piri pepper, or some red pepper flakes would be good in this also. Okay, now we're going to make our roux, which is going to be used to thicken up the milk. For a roux, for all roux, it's equal parts fat and flour. If you're making gravy down south, often they'll use like a pork lard for this. You could even use extra virgin olive oil. And you want to cook it over low heat for just about 5 minutes, I would say. What that does is it helps cook away some of the raw starch flavor from the flour. So I'm turning that very low, and I'll cook that for about another 4 minutes, and then just set it aside until I add it into the main dish. Okay, now we're going to add the egg to the cream. The egg is used as a thickener in this instance, the same way you would use an egg to thicken up the cream inside of a quiche, or you would use an egg to thicken up flan or creme brulee. That's how this is being used. I'm going to add 1 cup of cream. That's just a heavy whipping cream. Should be ready to add into the main dish in about 10 minutes. The potatoes and onions and bacalhau and the spices have been simmering. I'm going to taste it now because since I added in the bacalhau, it's been about 15 minutes. That's really good. Like the flavors in this, perfect. I'm not going to add any more salt. I am going to add in the cream, and the cream doesn't have any salt at all, so I might just add a pinch of salt when I incorporate the cream. It's pretty close. So at this point, I'll put in the roux. Here's our roux mixture. And again, this won't clump up because we have it in butter, and just kind of stir it in there. Okay, you should taste a piece of potato now. You want to grab a medium-sized piece, and it should be cooked. So just a slight bite, but you should feel like, okay, this potato is cooked. That it's been about 30, 35 minutes. since I've added in the potatoes. And now I'm going to turn this off for about 10 minutes and just let it rest. Right now, this is probably at like 180 degrees. I just want it to cool down a little bit before I add in the cream, because I don't want that cream the egg and that cream to curdle right away when I put it in there. About 173 degrees. I want that to cool down to about 130 maybe. Then I'm going to mix in our cream egg mixture and then put it in a casserole. My oven is already preheated to 350 degrees. It'll go into the oven for an additional 20 minutes. Okay, it's been about 10 minutes. Just wanted to let it cool off just slightly, so it's still about 140 degrees. I'll mix in my cream mixture. This is the cream and the egg. Make sure that's stirred up well or just evenly distributed. And now I'll put this in a casserole dish. That looks great. So I'm going to put the casserole in a 350 degree oven for about 30 minutes. I want it to get up to about a temperature of 165. At that temperature, the eggs will set. Now I'm going to mix in about a half cup of breadcrumbs and a half cup of cheese. You could just about use any kind of fairly dry cheese. I wouldn't use anything obviously like a ricotta, a cheese that's more on the drier side, like a fontina, parmesan, or if you have some Portuguese cheese. So that mixture in about 20 minutes will go on top of the casserole, and then the broiler will be turned on until it gets a beautiful golden color. Okay, now I'm just going to get my garnish ready. My tomatoes, saute these for about 10 minutes just to intensify the flavor, get rid of some of that moisture from the tomato. And then I'm also going to season it with a pinch of salt and a little bit of black pepper. And then finish it with maybe like a teaspoon of extra virgin olive oil. A little black pepper there, pinch of kosher salt, and now a teaspoon of extra virgin olive oil. Cook for about 5 minutes over low heat and set aside until the dish is done. Okay, it's been 20 minutes. Smells wonderful, looks beautiful. I turned on my broiler to 480, so now I'm just going to sprinkle it with this cheese breadcrumb mixture. And now I'll put it back in the oven, I'm guessing 5 to 10 minutes. Keep a close eye on it. I would say like every 3 minutes, pop your head in the oven, or if you could see through your oven door easily, because you do not want it to burn. This only had to be under the broiler for about 3 minutes. My rack was pretty close to the top of the oven, so it went fairly quick. I will put on some of my tomatoes as garnish. You can see the cheese crusted up nicely. Let it rest for sure 10 minutes to 20 minutes before digging into it. Just helps it set up a little bit. Sprinkle with a little fresh parsley. I wish you could jump through the camera and smell this. It's incredible. It just turned out great. Nice crispy topping to it. Can't wait to dig into this. Look at that. Good luck. I got the piece with the bay leaf in it. All sorted. I'm going to have a good year. Man, that smells good. Wish you could be here to try it. Thanks for joining me. If you like these videos, please subscribe. I'm going to enjoy this with a nice glass of Madeira wine. Now go cook for someone you love. Man, that smells good.